We're live on a Thursday. It's the 13th of February. So good to be back with you for a Ravens lunch hour live stream here inside the vault. I'm Bobby Trossett, as always, joined alongside my co-host and partner, Sarah Ellison. We're working our way through our first official week of off-season, being that the Super Bowl is now behind us. And today is brought to you and presented by one of this month's small business Patreon title sponsors of ours. It's our friends at Hidden Waters Farm. You can discover the taste of sustainability at Hidden Waters Regenerative Farm in Pikesville, Maryland, where they raise 100% grass-fed, grass-finished beef, pasture-raised chicken and eggs, woodland pork, and organic produce grown the way nature intended. For a free pack of chicken drumsticks, you can spend $50 or more online or in-store using our code FREEDRUM50. More information can be found in the show notes and in the live chat as a pinned comment. We've got a jam-packed show for you coming up over the next hour or so, including a late-night hire, Sarah. John Harbaugh's staff for the 2025-2026 season continues to materialize. This has not yet been announced by the team, but we'll get into the specifics of it and why we feel like it's clear, it's proof in terms of why the Ravens are hell-bent on fixing one specific issue they had defensively last year. You're going to also get into how Eric DeCosta can create a significant amount of cap space and get Lamar new money. Kyle Hamilton shared some thoughts with Mina Kimes and Puka Nacua in terms of what his future role might look like in Baltimore's secondary and a number of other things, including, I'm sure, some on the back end post-sports content in terms of what I was invited to tomorrow night on Valentine's Day as a single 30-year-old. So all that more. Let's get to it, partner. You ready to roll?
I'm ready to roll, Bobby. I'm in my Valentine's Day pink a day early because after this, I'm going to my youngest daughter's second grade Valentine's Day party. I volunteered for that. I'm bringing a bunch of heart-shaped sunglasses for the class. So this should be fun. I'll have some pink tomorrow. I'm going to have to go pink back-to-back days. So very, very excited about this holiday coming up. And I was just being cracked up while you were giving the intro. I'm like reading the chat. Happy everybody enjoyed, or many people, not everybody, many people enjoyed our debate with Emmanuel Acho yesterday. Wanted to thank him again for coming on and subjecting himself to some scrutiny on his MVP vote. That was a lot of fun. And, he was nice enough and said, we got to do it again sometime. So next time we have a big disagreement, we may just have to do that.
As we expected to, highly engaged with video, north of 20,000 views and counting. So we appreciate you guys for all the support.
The comments that are popping off on it.
The comments are popping it off. And, as promised, we have this new playlist section. We call it the best of, where we take, hours long live streams and condense it into 15, 20 minutes. And I think yesterday's case was about 30 minutes or so. So you can go check that out if you haven't already done so. And I'll echo your comments as well. I thought it was great to get to know Emmanuel on more of a conversational level and sort of an informal basis on our channel. So thought that was awesome. Hope you guys enjoyed it as well. We'll begin, though, with John Harbaugh's staff continuing to kind of materialize and expand here as different hires, different reports have been made and confirmed by the team in recent weeks. This has not yet been confirmed by the team, but Matt here on X has been all over it, especially when folks go from the college ranks to the NFL. But in this case, Donald DeLesio's taking an opportunity with the Ravens after 4 years in Kansas City, and he is expected to be the new safeties coach in Baltimore. And as you see here from Matt, he noted that he's been with the Chiefs the last 4 years, meaning he is a two-time Super Bowl champ. He's got some great experience over there under Andy Reid, and he's also, worked with some really dynamic players like Justin Reed and Brian Cook. Those two players combined for 165 tackles and 4 picks this season alone. If you're wondering Donald's resume, his track record, who this guy is, he's still very young. He's 33. He looks young. He's a former defensive back. He played his college football at Youngstown State from 2010 to 2014, and then began his coaching career at his alma mater in Ohio, and started as a defensive quality control assistant there. He then was promoted to defensive line coach From there, he took over as co-defensive coordinator and also was the defensive line coach simultaneously, and then promoted to solely defensive coordinator during the 2019 season, then made the jump to LSU as a defensive analyst for 2020, and then made the big jump to the NFL with Kansas City as a defensive assistant in 2021. And then he was the safeties coach from 2022 through this past season. So he's a young, kind of bright, up-and-coming mind, Sarah, which if you kind of look at the trail of decisions that have been made so far this offseason, I think, yes, you have the Chuck Paganos, which we'll review in just a second, sort of that have brought wisdom and savvy and experience, much like Dean Pease did this past year in that advisory role as a consultant. But I think you've also seen John Harbaugh make a concerted effort to bring in this youthful infusion. That's exactly what Donald is.
Well, it's funny because when I first saw this tweet and it said that they're hiring Donald for the safeties coach, and I'm like, wait a minute, safeties coach, usually it's just like a secondary coach. And don't the Ravens already have that with Chuck Pagano? And so, and to your point, this is like driving the message home even more. I think you're right. I think they're hell-bent on fixing a secondary that was ranked 32nd in pass defense for more than half of the season, and certainly got better, but they had to like sound the alarms. They literally had to go over there, break the glass, Bobby, and pull down that fire alarm. And that's when they brought in Dean Pease. I mean, they're benching guys. They're trying to find the right fit. And John Harbaugh doesn't want to ever be in that position again. So here you've got just a safeties coach, not a secondary coach, but a safeties coach. And it'll be nice because it'll be fun to see what he can do with Kyle Hamilton or whoever else they're going to bring in, because they do need another safety. It's an underrated need right now because we're so focused on the trenches, as we should be. So I like to see that John Harbaugh is still bringing in reinforcements.
Yeah, there's a nice blend of like the then and now that's starting to form within his coaching staff. And kind of alluded to it a second ago here that Dean Pease will be back in an advisory role. It might be down a tick from how much he provided them last year and sort of a desperation kind of opportunity bringing him in season, but it'll also be a family affair, Sarah, as Jeff Zarebek notes here, that Matt Pease is going to be the new assistant inside linebackers coach. So he'll be working closely with Tyler Santucci, who the Ravens brought in. Great experience at the college level. We'll get to him in just a second if you need a refresher. But what do I mean by the family affair? Matt is the son of Dean, and he spent the last couple of years as different assistants for organizations, particularly last year with Chicago. He was a defensive analyst, and then prior to that, he was following his father around when he was working at different stops like Tennessee and Atlanta. So there you have it. The Pease family well represented in Baltimore.
Yeah, that's certainly great for Matt, right? That he's got that connection, but also he has a bit of experience, as you noted here, with the Bears and Tennessee and Atlanta. So he's not coming in completely green. Assistant inside linebackers coach. That's pretty cool because we all know the linebackers coaches are often the ones that are promoted to become defensive coordinators. So sounds like he's kind of he's an assistant, but kind of in right where he wants to be as he grows his career. And so this is the assistant, but they already hired a new inside linebackers coach, right?
And that's who I was just going to kind of refresh folks on. And by the way, it was my understanding prior to the Santucci hire, who's now the inside linebackers coach and will take over for Mark DeLeon, who spent just 1 year in Baltimore. And obviously they had their fair share of issues in the middle part of the field, particularly in that first half of the season for Roquan. And then, Trenton had his struggles, which led to a demotion. So it wasn't really a surprise that this happened. But my understanding was that Matt Pease had a chance at the inside linebackers coach. But then the way that I kind of put all this together is when Santucci became available, or at least the Ravens targeted him as somebody that would be a candidate, being that he's got so much successful experience as a legit defensive coordinator at schools like Duke and Georgia Tech. they were like, oh, we have to bring this guy in. Like he's the potential guy you groom to be a future defensive coordinator. So yes, to answer your question, Tyler Santucci is the inside linebackers coach. He'll take over for DeLeon, and now he's going to have an assistant in Dean's son, Matt Pease.
And Bobby, these are absolutely necessary. The Ravens have way too much talent and way too much money coming from their cap going to these positions at inside linebacker and secondary. There is no way they should have been 32nd last year, ever. I mean, you've got Kyle Hamilton. You have a veteran in Marlon Humphrey. You have this rookie sensation in Nate Wiggins. You have a veteran who turned around the defense when he was traded for in Roquan Smith. Now, maybe he's taken a step back, but it shouldn't be that big of a fall. I'm sorry. And you had Marcus Williams. Like, for sure, there's a problem when you have – there's no way that they had missed on all those guys. Marlon Humphrey had the most interceptions of any cornerback in the NFL. We know who Kyle Hamilton is. He's an all-pro. And so that just should never have happened yesterday. And I know that, last season. And I know part of it is Zach Orr coming into his own as a first-time ever coordinator. But what these moves say to me is that they feel like Zach Orr just didn't have the support that, say, McDonald had when he became a defensive coordinator and he had veteran coaches everywhere. Like, I hear people making jokes about, like, look at all these veterans. Is Zach Orr really going to have a voice? Well, Mike McDonald had all those veteran voices. He had 3 guys working for him that all became defensive coordinators. All 3 of them. And so go ahead and give Zach Orr the support that he needs and make this defense a Ravens standard defense that we all came to know and love. Just because Lamar Jackson, the offense, is taken off doesn't mean that there's no standard in Baltimore for this defense. So, yeah, attack it. And that's exactly what they're doing first with these coaching hires.
Yeah, I would agree. And just so that we're all up to speed, out Chris Hewitt, Doug Mallory, in Chuck Pagano, Donald DeLessio.
Where's Santucci on here?
Well, he's Jeff's taking a close look at the secondary.
I see.
So these are all secondary moves right here. Middle part of the field, yeah, you bring in Santucci and now Matt Pease, and you let go of Mark DeLeon. So that's where things are. And obviously, as Jeff notes, 32nd pass defense, well documented for a good portion of last year. Change was inevitable, and now we've seen exactly that, change. Sarah, what we've seen a significant change in recent years, really the last 2, is sack production. After a historic 2023 season where they were the Triple Crown as a defense, leading the league for the first time ever in points allowed, takeaways, and sacks, they followed that up being top 2. They finished top 2 in sacks. And I think a lot of that has to do with this guy. You know, I always, any chance I get to build him up, I love it.
Here we go. Do your thing.
You know it. Maybe it's beating the dead horse here, but Chuck Smith, Ravens outside linebackers coach. And I think it's just a decent segue before we get into the cap conversation, Sarah, because I think it speaks to John Harbaugh's hiring abilities. And he went down that non-traditional path a couple of years ago by bringing in Chuck, who's referred to as Dr. Rush and is renowned in the pass rush community. And so I just wanted to bring this up because yesterday we played a segment from last week's show in New Orleans, the facility. Kyle Van Noy went on with Acho and his crew and obviously made headlines yesterday, which we talked about, which was essentially like answering that question 10 toes down about a potential holdout after a career high 12.5 sacks. He's like, I'm not going to be a distraction. I'm a pro. I'm going to be there. Yeah. Like Eric and I will have our conversations, but I'm going to be there and I'm going to be ready to go. And you want to know who saluted him? His coach, Chuck Smith, quote tweeting that snippet and said, "A pro's pro," tagged Kyle with the salute emoji, #loyalty, #salute. And talk about somebody that I would love to track down at some point this offseason to get his perspective on not just how he's transformed this group, but also how he's gotten so much production out of a 33-year-old who was on the couch at the time of the Ravens taking a chance on him prior to London 2 years ago. So there you have it. Dr. Rush checking in on Twitter yesterday.
There we go. Love it.
And that brings us to the cap conversation, which you've prepared.
Yes, let's talk about money. Let's talk about money, as the Ravens are going to need it at this time of the year. Brian McFarland, as we know, you can go to different websites and see how much cap space the Ravens have, but Brian does what's like the most realistic. Sometimes people will like have it right now, but Brian like already puts in moves that have been announced or things like that, even though it hasn't hit the cap yet. So Ravens have about $6 million in cap space. Bobby, that's not even going to sign your draft class. That's not going to sign your draft class, let alone any free agents. None of that's happening. So, of course, just like every offseason, the Ravens are tight against the cap. And why are they always tight against the cap? Because they're not cheap, despite what people like to say sometimes when they're angry with the front office. They always spin up to the cap. Now, that's the same, right? They're tight against the cap. What's different this year is there's not a lot of obvious places to cut players to create cap space. Okay, so just to be clear here, there are about 3 different ways that you can create cap space. Okay, you can do it by cutting people, you can do it by restructures, or you can do it by extensions. And so sometimes when we bring up Lamar Jackson's money, people start to think that like we're suggesting that the Ravens try to get money back from the deal that they already had. That is not the case. Okay. The Ravens can absolutely open up significant cap space and Lamar Jackson can make more money. Okay. But let's go through some of these. Let me show you how there's not a lot of good cap cutting candidates. So Brian McFarland put in his data mind. He's that lawyer. We know how Brian thinks. And he put up a list of maybe some guys that could be vulnerable to be cut or traded in order to create some money. But when he put this tweet out, he said, it's a short list and I had a hard time coming up with many. He goes, so I added a few that I really don't think are going to be cut. So the 2 that he doesn't really think are going to be cut is Michael Pierce and Broderick Washington. But he puts it in there in case the Ravens draft big time on the interior defensive line. And so he's like, in that case, maybe we could see them cut. But again, they're not going to open up a ton of money. So what does it matter? If you cut Michael Pierce, you're gaining less than $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay. If you cut Broderick Washington, less than $1 million. So this is how hard he had to stretch to find people. He threw those 2 guys on there. Marcus Williams, he has on here, but that $6 million that the Ravens already have, that already accounts for what the Ravens announced, that they're going to cut him. And they redid his contract and all that kind of stuff. So that money's already accounted for in the $6 million. So that leaves really 3 guys: Mark Andrews, Arthur Marlette, and Justin Tucker. And again, Arthur Marlette, he would only create $2 million and $2.25 million. Not a lot. So the big ones that it can come from is Mark Andrews, which would be $11 million in cap savings. That would be helpful. But of course, you're not going to cut him outright. That would have to come via trade. Do we know whether the Ravens want him or not? In their postseason presser, they made it sound like he was going to be around. But when you start crunching numbers, it's a little bit scary. Justin Tucker, based off of his play and the news and the allegations that have come out, if you just cut him outright, you're actually losing money on the cap. You're going to lose about $500,000. But if you did a post-June 1 cut, then you'd be saving $4.2 million. So that would be helpful. But then you got to go out, obviously, and find a kicker, or you got to go out and find another tight end if you move on from Mark Andrews. So not a lot of places to where you can cut people. Bobby, any thoughts or questions or anything on this part of where you could make money, but there's not a lot of places?
Yeah, it's slim pickings. And like you said, the organization's made it. I mean, there have been absolutely zero indications that they would move on from 89.
Yeah.
And then again, could be savvy business behind closed doors of what they might come up with between now and the league year, or between, in the coming months. But I mean, the fact that Brian shared that he struggled to make the list and added a couple players on there that he doesn't even feel like is realistic, but maybe just for the purpose of the exercise,
right,
kind of shows you that it could be grim.
Right. So if there's not a lot of places out of Andrews and maybe Tucker, then a lot of people will keep use the word restructure. Okay. And they say restructure even when they don't mean restructure. Okay. So here are some guys that you could restructure and you could create significant cap space. The problem with restructuring, Bobby, is you're taking a deal that's already done. And so you're not adding on any more years. And so when you open up money this year, all you're doing is moving the cap hit to a later year. And that hurts. So for example, let's take a look at Lamar Jackson. The Ravens are going to have to do something with several of these guys listed here. Okay, so here's Lamar Jackson, who's going to have a $45 million cap hit. Let me be clear before things get taken out of context. Lamar Jackson 1,000,000% deserves his contract. Ever since he re-signed, all he's done is played an MVP level, got one MVP, got another best player, which I guess is not MVP, according to Achu and many other voters. That's all he's done. Whatever it takes to keep Lamar around, you do. Yep. That being said, you also want to help Lamar while he's here. So you have to manage the cap appropriately. And a lot of people will complain, well, how come you're not talking about owner's money? We could have that conversation, but let's just be clear. The cap is set by the league. And so you have to, and the NFL and NFLPA mutually agree on the cap. Okay. So Steve Bisciotti is spending everything he's allowed to spend based off of the deal that the NFL and the NFLPA agree to mutually. And then the teams get to decide how much they want to do that. So obviously Lamar deserves to be paid, but we also need to manage the cap so that you have help for him. So you look at him, he's got 45 million cap hit this year. It's a significant jump from the first 2 years of his new contract. And so Brian's saying you could restructure him and save almost $16 million. Hello, $16 million is awesome. The problem is if you do just a simple restructure, remember in next year and the year after, Lamar Jackson's cap hit is $75 million. So if you move this $15 million to future years, his cap hit is probably going to be $80 million. And Lamar needs help. Lamar's one of one, but he's not playing all the positions. He needs help. So to me, it would be irresponsible of the Ravens to do a simple restructure for him, because then you're dealing with $80 million cap hits over the next 2 years. Same thing with Marlon Humphrey. You could clear $11 million, but then that's just going to future years. You could do Roquan Smith. You could do Matabike. You could do Bateman. But all you're doing is making it harder and harder in Lamar's prime years. I don't want to do that. I want to manage the cap as smart as possible to make sure that the Ravens are getting Lamar help in his prime years. So if you're not going to do a restructure with any of these guys, and I don't think you should, I mean, maybe you could with Bateman. That money is, I mean, it's not a ton, but you're not making a ton at 1.5 million, right? Okay. So that's where the third thing comes in, and that's extensions. We've got to extend. So how is that different from a restructure? Well, you're actually adding years onto the contract, and you're adding new money. So this is where Lamar can get new money, literally a new check with millions of dollars in cash signed out to his name from the Baltimore Ravens, but they're not killing themselves in 2026 and 27, because when you add on more years, now you can spread the money across over, say, 4 or 5 more years instead of just over the next 2. Okay. So as he pointed out here, the 16 million you can make with the restructure, but then you've got 80 million over 26 and 27. So he's saying, hopefully the Ravens and Jackson can find a middle ground on an extension, which should be, fingers crossed, he writes, easier this time because the parameters would seem more defined this time around, because we know how long it took with EDC and Lamar the first time. He's like crossing his fingers. He's like, they've already got a structure. They kind of know what they're doing. So maybe it would be easier this time. He says an extension for Jackson would likely create a similar amount of cap space. You can still create 16 million, which is a ton, but you're not killing yourself in 26 and 27 because you've added on more years. Plus Lamar gets that new check with new guaranteed money. That alone could open up a massive amount of money. But you don't have to stop there. What about other extensions you could give to guys that you would like to stay around? You're not going to give extensions to guys that you're like, no, I don't believe in you beyond, 2 or 3 more years. But here's a list of 2 or 3 more guys that you could create money right now and get extensions for guys that you want around here. So Marlon Humphrey, who just had a resurgent year, and by the way, wants to retire a Raven, and by the way, is open to moving safety when the time comes. So here Brian writes that he's got $18 million due to him this season. And so he's a prime candidate for an extension. While an extension would likely not create as much cap space as a restructuring, it would extend Humphrey beyond 2026 and would allow the Ravens to spread his salary cap hits over more than 2 years remaining. So if we back up of what he could have made with the restructure, $11 million, he's saying not as much. He didn't give an exact number. So what, maybe $5 million on top of the $16 million for Lamar if you extend him. Odafe Owe, remember, he's going to play on that 5th-year option at $13.2 million. An extension, says Brian, could create $7 or $8 million this year if you want to keep Odafe around. And then Derrick Henry, we've already talked about him before, with a 2-year, $24 million extension. You're keeping him here for a total of 3 years, and you're saving as much as $5 million. So between an extension for Lamar, an extension for Marlon, an extension for Odafe, an extension for Derrick Henry, that's $32 million, and that doesn't even count what happens with Mark Andrews.
Moral of the story is extensions are preferred here.
Yes. The question is, how does that work with Lamar Jackson? Because it did take a bit longer the last time they did it. And so if we remember, Eric DaCosta was asked by Morgan Adsit at that season-ending presser.
Yeah.
And she asked if there had been conversations yet with Lamar, or she asked, are you gonna kick it down the road? And he says, this is DaCosta's answer. He goes, yes, we've seen teams do that, meaning extend players. And Lamar Jackson and we've had a lot of discussions about contracts over the years. And at some point, I'll probably talk to Lamar. I'm just really happy and blessed to have watched him play football this year. We just finished the season. I want Lamar to relax a little bit and think back to what he accomplished as a team, what we accomplished as a team, and what he accomplished individually. We'll have those conversations probably at some point. And from what I've seen with Lamar, he's just grown so much, even just over the last couple years. He says we communicate all the time. And as I said, I'm blessed to be with him the last 7 years. So a lot of people you were asking people at the Super Bowl, Bobby, what do you think of a new deal and all that? And I don't think the national people were quite ready for it yet. And I think most people expect it after this year. And that could be the case because they can't do it with a $75 million cap. But Brian's suggesting that they do it now instead of then, because it'll be much harder when that $75 million is looming right away. So we'll see if that happens, but it wouldn't be surprising to me if right before free agency opens in March that we get some news of these extensions with one, some, or all of these guys.
Either that, or it's like I'm listening to the way that you're laying this out, and it's like it's either that or bust, unless you want to trade Mark Andrews, right? It's like,
well, you can do both of those, by the way.
Yeah. But if you're not going to trade him, then you have to almost for sure to go the extension route.
Yep.
So good stuff.
Super
Get to a couple super chats.
Yep. On the same page.
Louis Jimenez, I appreciate the time, hard work, and attention to content detail you've both done for us Ravens fanatics. All hail, #the vault. Appreciate you, Louis. And Dreams.
This is why you win when the players are cheap. So true. If you get rid of Mark and win the Super Bowl, it would be a gut punch, the same way it was a gut punch to Todd Heap winning the Super Bowl the year after he was let go. It's true. But then in this case, that's on Mark himself because he didn't catch that ball and he fumbled.
Yeah. Just ran into Todd in New Orleans. He was walking around Radio Row with Dennis Pitta. Love me some Todd Heap. He's a great dude. That brings us to what's going on in Buffalo.
Yeah, so this is interesting because we've obviously been talking about Derrick Henry getting an extension. We just mentioned it here. Brian's recommending a 2-year, $24 million extension, so $12 million per year. And we remember, let's just play it just as a flashback as I bring up the James Cook stuff up in Buffalo. Remember, we played this a couple days ago. Derrick Henry on the edge with Micah Parsons talked about finishing his career with Baltimore. It's very heartwarming. It's like, this is great endorsement right as free agency starts. Kyle Van Noy does the same. It's all love. Here's what he's got to say.
What made Baltimore so special to you? Why do you love it so much?
Yeah, that kind of got taken out of context. Like you said, media. Mm-hmm. My words was, I wanted to finish my career in Baltimore. So, I want this to be my last stop. I'm not trying to go to another team, once it's all said and done. Now, I want to finish my career in Baltimore. Now, as far as where I want to retire, that's still to be determined. It could be Baltimore, could be Tennessee. So
a 10-day,
it's still to be determined.
So you did a 2-year deal.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna finish it? You got more? You playing a couple more years?
Yes, I want to continue to play. I love Baltimore, man. I feel like they gave me a rejuvenation, just being there, being around them, being around the organization. I love it from top to bottom. It's a first-class organization for sure.
So you how many more years you got for us?
I don't know until I feel like it's time to hang it up, man. But just know you can be seeing me for a little while, though.
Okay, so you hear him talking about he felt a resurgent year, rejuvenated, loves the Ravens, wants to finish with the Ravens. It's just good vibes. Later on, he talked about how he had something, coming with getting a new contract. Ian Rappaport reported the same thing. Then over in Buffalo, this just makes me, I'm just contrasting it because I'm just so grateful for the way there's no drama between the two of them. And this is not hating on James Cook. A lot of guys do this to get leverage, and he's looking for his second contract, not like his third or fourth one as Derrick Henry. But there's drama up in Buffalo. And yesterday, during an Instagram video, James Cook pinned his own comment when they were talking about, him getting a new deal. And his comment was $50 million a year and pins it. Okay. Then he unfollowed the Bills and removed all Bills posts from his Instagram. And he changed his profile picture, which originally had him in a Bills uniform. So listen, this is becoming more standard these days. And players, especially when they get their one shot, he's a running back. His second contract is everything. He could fall off at 30 and who knows what's going to happen. So this is no hate on him. What it is appreciation that right now there's no drama. We've been through our drama. We had the Lamar Jackson putting up the trade. I would like to be traded as John Harbaugh sitting down for a press conference. We had that drama. I prefer these days where Derrick Henry is saying it's a first-class organization. He wants to stay here. Where Kyle Van Noy is saying they've treated me right. I'm going to handle this contract situation behind closed doors because they treat us right. I like the brief because who knows what's going to happen over every offseason, but I'll take it now. This brief, just positive vibe going on where everybody just wants to come back and they want to finish their unfinished business from last season.
And then you look at the market too. You look at his peers. Is this annual value or this is annual value?
I grabbed the wrong one.
Yeah, this seems a little high, but maybe these are the contracts that they signed, right?
Yeah, I did the full contracts. I grabbed the wrong one. Highest paid running backs. Let me get it for you. Yeah, because I wanted to put in context. I wanted to put in context what $15 million per year is versus what Brian McFarland is suggesting for Derrick Henry contract average. Here we go, contract average. So if he's asking for $15 million, that would put him as the second highest paid running back in the NFL. Now, if the Bills fans had anything to say about it after they trashed him all season long, he's not worth $15 million, Bobby. So Christian McCaffrey is number one with $19 million. And then there's a huge drop off to Jonathan Taylor with the Colts at $14 million. And then it's Saquon Barkley at $12.5 million. So he wants to leapfrog all these dudes except for Christian McCaffrey. Now, if Derrick Henry were to get $12 million per year, that would have him tied for 5th most. Unless James gets way up there, then he'd be tied for 6th most. So
Good luck, James.
He's asking for money. I don't know if you'll get 15 million, but maybe it's one of those things where you ask for a ton, but you have a more realistic number in your mind, right? Hoping that the negotiations will get to that real number that you want. But he tied Derrick Henry in touchdown, rushing touchdowns. Probably would have had more, but we know that Josh Allen had, what did he have, like 11 rushing touchdowns?
He liked his tush pushes.
Did he get tush pushes too?
He liked his QB
was he running
sneaks.
today?
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't remember now.
He had plenty of those. I'm looking up James' full stats. So he went for...
He's over 1,000. He's back-to-back 1,000-yard years.
Yeah, I'm just curious what he did through the air, though, because he was a sort of a dual threat guy. But he had 1,009 on the ground, 16 touchdowns. He had 207 carries. That was an average of 4.9. 1 whole yard less on average than Derrick, by the way. Derrick was 5.9, which was far and away the best in his career. And then James through the air, where's he at? 32 receptions for 258 yards. So, I mean, hey, a standout year for him, but man, good luck commanding that kind of money at that position. Goodness.
That's right. Woof. He despite what Bills fans say, he had a great year.
Yes, he did.
He did.
Yes, he did. Does Mahomes, is he worthy of the Lamar treatment?
Okay, so so I was going to bring this on a couple days ago, but we kept having other content, so it feels a little further removed. But I was curious a while ago how media would react to Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs loss in the Super Bowl. And while his offensive line was indeed atrocious, he's also been playing with that offensive line all year, and he's been able to make it work. He's a veteran. He can change plays at the line of scrimmage, all that kind of stuff. And my view is that while some in the media would maybe give that context for Lamar, usually at the end of the day, they're like, well, Lamar's the quarterback. He didn't figure it out. So the loss is mostly on him. So who do you think I was interested in listening to first in terms of his reaction to Patrick Mahomes' play? Because Mahomes did not play well, and I get the offensive line, but he also did not play well. So who do you think I went to first?
Oh, I wonder. Who could it have possibly been first that's had a really tough week spinning this, I'm sure?
Well, that's the question. Did he spin it? Did Mr. Nick Wright spin the loss? And as you can see on this graphic, the question posed to Nick and the panel at First Things First was, is this loss all on Patrick? Now, before I play the clip of his answer, you'll notice in this screen grab that I grabbed that he's got confetti in his hair. Bobby, when I tell you Chris Broussard and Kevin Wildes trolled nonstop, and I mean relentlessly trolled him. First of all, let me just recap how they trolled him throughout the entire show. So they open up the show and it's kind of like, oh, that was funny. They have those tubes with confetti in it that pop, So when the show first starts, they both have like 3 or 4 tubes right next to themselves on their desks. And they're popping it that the Chiefs lost, because nobody has been more arrogant, and rightfully so. You can be arrogant when you're cheering for a team and a quarterback that is always in the AFC Championship and is almost always in the Super Bowl and has won like 3 Super Bowls in the Patrick Mahomes era. So, but he was just smug about it. So when you dish it out like that, you got to take it. And to his credit, he kind of did. But they start with the confetti. Then they bring back the church choir. And they're talking about they have songs about how bad Mahomes played and this and that. And Bobby, when they bring in these things, it's like in the middle of Nick Wright making a serious point. And then they just interrupt him with this choir coming on. So then it's like, haha, that was funny. Then they go to like another segment. Nick Wright is in the middle of thought. Here comes a band, like trumpets. Trumpets are coming. Like it was non-stop trolling throughout the entire show. So that's where this confetti comes from. But after I think the trumpets left, they allow Nick Wright to answer the question of how much of this loss was on Patrick Mahomes. Here's his answer.
How much of this loss is on Mahomes? Or the vast majority?
I'll keep playing more. He said the vast majority, Nick Wright. Okay, let's keep going.
Listen, what?
Sorry. I'm upset too.
So, it was one of the worst games of his career. I will, again, because I'm going to be fair across the board here, I reject the stat padding piece of it. I think that was fighting to the end. I don't think it was, I care about what my stat line is.
Oh, no, I don't think that. I agree with that.
Okay. He just didn't seem right the whole game. By right, I don't mean like he was hurt. I mean, it just didn't seem like Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. And so I know that the smartest football people are going to explain how he was drawing dead because of the offensive line. But I can't choose to like those people in this instance when I've kind of hated them all year. And so it was a combination of Philly playing as well defensively as I feel any team has played in any game all year, and Kansas City's superstar, I believe most talented player in the history of the league, having his worst game in years.
Yeah.
So when you are the leader of the team, the best player of the team, and you have your worst game of the year, it'd be like if Saquon had 4 fumbles and the defense gave, you know what I mean? Whatever it is, like, you can't have it. So is it all on, I won't say it's all on Patrick, like 100% because it's a football game, but I mean, this will.
Your thoughts? Were you expecting that?
No, he took it on the chin.
Yeah.
He took it on the chin. How could you not? I mean, Patrick was, you can't blame it all on him because of the way that Kansas City's offensive line got worked, similarly to how the Ravens got worked by that defensive front. But clearly that had an effect from the jump on Mahomes. His footwork was off, his timing was off, his rhythm was off. And obviously that led to being turnover prone, which ultimately flipped the game there in the second quarter, and they were never able to really recover. So yeah, I guess we can give a light little hat tip there to Nick for eating it a little bit the next day.
Let's see how long it lasts, right? Let's see how long it lasts. You can feel his humility, which I am wondering if that's what probably gave him. This is the most respect I've seen him give Lamar in his Mahomes mountain, where he puts together his mountain of quarterbacks and ranks them in tiers. And he's got Mahomes number 1, and then Allen and Lamar on the second tier. Like, I can't argue with that. I would put Lamar above Allen, but they're putting him in tiers. Right? And so, okay. He's got Hurts down below, even though Hurts got that Super Bowl MVP. He's got Jaden Daniels and Burrow Jaden Daniels, Hurts, and Burrow all on the third tier. Stafford, Baker, Goff, Stroud on the fourth tier. I won't keep going. But I was like, this is the first time. There's so many times where he puts Lamar on a much lower tier. And I'm like, holy cow, that loss where you finally see what happens when not only you're like, yes, for sure, Patrick Mahomes didn't play well, but even though he said, I can't love the people who try to give those context answers, he's like, I can't hate him all year and love him now. But in the back of his head, it must have done something, because he sees that like Andy Reid didn't have his best game either. His strategy wasn't the best, not running the ball, although Mahomes could have changed it at the line of scrimmage if he wanted to check into a run. But I was like, this must have humbled him to the point where he gives Lamar his correct due.
These pyramids make my head hurt.
Do they?
They become more and more steep, I feel like, by the graphic. You know, he's got how many layers, how many levels does he have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
I think it's
6,
all 32,
7.
isn't it?
He's got 7. Yeah, it must be. He's got 7 different layers of this pyramid, and he's got Aaron Rodgers on the last one. The last layer.
Well,
who, by the way,
based off of his availability or lack thereof prior to this year, and then his play this year, it seems about right.
We'll get to him at quick hits. I don't.
You wouldn't put him there? What did he do to
No.
make? I'm talking about. This is like, listen, we're not talking about all-time quarterbacks.
Yeah, I get it.
I mean, I wouldn't put his season above Bo Nix.
I mean, he's got Drake
Darnold.
May.
Look how low he has Darnold, though. Darnold, you'd think would be a little bit higher after that season.
He's got Drake May and Caleb Williams above him. I mean, I get it. It was not pretty in New York. And by the way, we're going to have a quick hit on that because he's no longer in New York. So he's going to be searching for his next team if he doesn't choose to retire. But what other Lamar national treatment?
So then we can go over. Listen, there was another one I didn't grab just for time's sake. Stephen A. Smith grilled Patrick Mahomes pretty good on First Take. But then there was this one over here at the facility. Now, I will say this. I did not pull it in. Acho, we've heard enough from him over the last day or so. And again, appreciate him, but I didn't grab it because I just didn't want to overdo it. He put most of the blame on Andy Reid and not Patrick Mahomes. And James Jones, who always keeps it 100, got a little fired up by Acho for putting most of the blame on Andy Reid. And here he is, James Jones.
None of us is docking Patty Mahomes for nothing. Patty Mahomes is special. But we got to keep it a buck up here in the facility.
Yep.
He did not play good. And if this was a game of Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen, we would be killing them. It wouldn't be no stats. And that goes for the same for Patty. He did not play well last night. The Chiefs did not have answers. We praise the Kansas City Chiefs all year long of play design. Look at what Andy Reid designed up. Look at what the plays that Patrick Mahomes is making. They had no quick game. They had no run game. They had no special designs. You got 4 rushers coming at you, and the Eagles ain't been known for sacking the quarterback all year long. They just been known for playing really good defense, assignment sound, and taking the ball away, not sacking the quarterback. Those dudes was unblocked all the way down the line. All 4 of them was having a party at the quarterback. Dead serious. All 4 of them was there. It was you this time, Sweat. You this time, Carter. All 4 of them was getting to the quarterback at will, and the Kansas City Chiefs all game long had no answers. And if they did have answers, Patty Mahomes was not getting the ball out of his hands. They had drop passes. I've never seen a Chiefs team look like that on the offensive side of the ball. They got beat down, especially the best player in the world. And I agree with what Shady's saying, because Tom Brady would have had some answers.
Yeah.
And that's all he's saying from level-wise. Like, Tom Brady would have had some answers for that. You're only rushing 4 on me? Man, I'm going to have a plan to get this ball out of my hand or whatever it is. Patty Mahomes and Andy Reid, I'm telling you, I'm not saying they didn't prepare. They didn't look prepared.
Woo. He laid in on that one. James Jones climbing my ladder of guys I like to listen to among the national media.
I thought that was pretty fair.
Yeah.
He also pressed in that same interview that we shared a snippet of yesterday with KVN talking about the holdout question. He also pressed the heck out of Kyle about the postseason woes the last couple of years and why the Ravens come up small in big moments. And Kyle was like, look, he was trying to be fair to his teammates and not give a PC answer, but also like,
he gave a PC answer at first, and James is like, nope, try again.
he did. And then, and James pressed him hard. And then he started talking about the turnovers. He started talking about the lack of execution. And, but you enjoy that. You can appreciate that from a guy in James Jones, who, as he says, keeps it a buck. But I agree with him on.
But he keeps it a buck for everybody. He keeps it a buck for everybody. Do you know what I mean? And that's more what I respect. He's not like keeping it a buck for Lamar and then let somebody else off the hook. Like it's equal opportunity where he keeps it real with everybody.
And yes, and that's why I agree with his Mahomes take. Hold Mahomes accountable.
And by the way, it's a good transition into, I think is Kyle Hamilton next for us?
Sure.
Well, a transition into that based off what you brought up with that little clip where James Jones was pressing KVN and he's like, all right, fine, I'll take it on the chin. Like, we just need to do it. In the Mina Kimes interview, and I forgot about this when we were talking about this morning, Mina asked Kyle Hamilton what the Ravens need to get over the hump. And he's like, honestly, I was just talking about this the other day with some of the teammates. He's like, don't get me wrong, it's always nice to add more people. And he's like, we're going to get the draft and we'll probably add free agents and all that. He goes, but honestly, he's like, it's just execution. Like, he literally, like, he said it, he basically said in so many, we didn't say it with these exact words, but basically was implying, like, we just need to stop shooting ourselves in the foot. And he talked about playoffs. He goes, there are so many times, he goes, it seems like we always get on like this 6-game stretch where we're like unstoppable. And that has happened the last 2 years where they've been unreal in December and then early January, the week 17 before they go into the playoffs. And he's like, we will just like be flying high. And he's like, and then we don't have to come from behind. And then all of a sudden we get in the playoffs and it's a little bit more difficult. And inevitably he's like, we're going to keep trying to not have to play from behind. But if it happens, he's like, we got to lock in. We can't expect to have these games where like we're just untouchable in the playoffs. And so I loved that answer. Where he was just like, we don't need anything. It's just all right here in our minds of like what happens when that pressure comes after we've been sailing.
Well, he's going to be one of those guys that's part of the solution because he's not going anywhere. And you referenced this interview. It was a trio interview. Mina had Kyle on and Puka Nacua, who's the Rams star wide receiver who's taken the league by storm. So this snippet that we're going to share with you is all about Kyle's future role, how Kyle obviously rose to the occasion after making a significant change personnel-wise and dropping back to traditional safety after 9 weeks, which, as we all know, it's been discussed over and over and over again, really helped transform Baltimore's pass defense, which was the league's worst through the first 9 or 10 weeks. So here is Kyle on how he views himself and how he views his future self in Baltimore.
It's kind of a time and place thing. With that, it's a week to week thing. Honestly, like sometimes I'll be playing more nickel, I'll be playing more safety, or even early in the year I was playing dime backer. It seemed like half the game. But I always tell the coaches, wherever you need me is wherever I want to be at. And the back half of the season, they felt like they needed me to be deep, just kind of control communication, make sure balls aren't going over our heads because, that's not a good look as a professional football team to give up 300 yards passing a game. And, everybody's frustrated at that point. But it's kind of funny. I've been playing a good amount of nickel the first 2 years in the league. And this past year I played some safety. But I was like, guys, I play safety. Like I played safety in high school. I played safety in college. I was drafted as a safety. It just so happens I can play nickel too. So I'm like, it's like going from shooting guard and then you go to a big lineup and now I'm playing the 3. So it was kind of a smooth transition.
Keep in mind, Sarah, whenever the basketball analogies come, this dude probably could have played Division I basketball if he wanted. And as I've noted a number of times over the years since he was drafted, his father, Derrick, played professional basketball overseas, and he grew up in the Greece area, if I'm not mistaken. So basketball very much involved in their family. You can see how his past basketball traits are played out in the field, especially when he's up at the line of scrimmage, tipping footballs, getting involved in space. But listening to him talk, you get this, he's such a savant, of the game, and he understands just how valuable he is. And we all know how valuable he was after that change was made around weeks 9 or 10.
Yeah. My favorite part of that clip is that he's like, hey guys, I play safety. Like,
yeah.
I remember
it's okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I can move back there. I know you've been putting me, or he said there were games where half the game he was at dime backer. What?
Yeah.
What? That would have helped also when the guys next to Roquan was struggling. Like I'm sure
kidding.
Roquan would be like, oh, Kyle Hamilton's next to me. Awesome.
Right.
Then they're like, sorry, Roquan, we're putting him back in safety,
Yeah.
So, but that was funny. Hey guys, I do play safety.
It's so refreshing, right? It's like, because so much was made of, oh my gosh, like you're not using Kyle as the Swiss Army knife. What?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
No, but you had, yes, you want that. That's the selfishly you want to see him in this dual role, but they needed him, and they needed him on the back end. And I'm sure for him, it was probably a tough ask, but he's been nothing but class with the way that he answered the bell. So always refreshing listening to Kyle speak. He was one that I wasn't able to track down last week, but he was hanging around Radio Row, and hopefully in the future. Speaking of future, just a reminder who the 2025-26 home and away opponents are for the Ravens. And the team tweeted this graphic out earlier today, maybe get you guys fired up in mid-February, because why not? We're, 5-6 months away from start of the season. But your home opponents, of course, outside of your division teams, are the New England Patriots, the New York Jets, the Detroit Lions, the Chicago Bears, Houston Texans, and the Los Angeles Rams. On the road, outside the division, Buffalo Bills, Miami Dolphins, Green Bay Packers, Minnesota Vikings, and yes, a rematch of Week 1 and last year's AFC Championship game, the Kansas City Chiefs.
It's in Kansas City. Ugh.
You can bet, I'm not a betting man, but you can bet that will be a primetime game.
Why is it? Yes. Sorry to interrupt you.
One of 5, right? They're going to max him out. We know how it was this past year. I went and looked prior to our live stream just to give myself a memory jog. There were 5 primetime games and a standalone on Christmas Day. So we'll see what they choose to do come May when the schedule's released.
Why is it in Kansas City again when they just played Week 1 in Kansas City?
Don't know.
I need it.
Well, no.
I know they have a
no,
formula.
yeah, you're right. That was. Yeah, that's right.
The toe. That was in Kansas City.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, but this is what happens when you win the AFC North again. You're going to get the number 1 schedule again. Like you're playing other number 1 seeds when you're matched up against other divisions. So let's talk about the playoff teams in here again. So Steelers was a playoff team, but Bills, Dolphins never made it, right?
Miami did not make it.
Green Bay, Vikings, Kansas City. So that's 5. You're playing 5 teams that made the playoffs. Now, again, this is a year-to-year league, so they could drop off. But coming off the year that we just finished, 5 games on the road against playoff teams. Yep. Then at home, it's 1. Actually, the home schedule is easier. 1 with Steelers, 1 with Lions,
Houston and LA.
Texans and LA. So that's 9 total.
Yep.
9 total. So yowza. And by the way, this is also what kind of, you know how like after you finish a debate, you're like, oh, I wish I said this. I wish I would have said that. But honestly, I mean, I'm overall happy with it. But what's funny to me is that like Audrey was talking about how the MVP was impacted with context of who the teammates were. But then you asked the strength of schedule question at the end, which I don't think we got an answer.
Yeah, we didn't.
But it's like, why is it that the MVP needs the context of teammates, but the overall record doesn't need context of the strength of strength of schedule?
Totally agree.
You know what I mean?
Totally agree.
Like,
totally.
Like that's crazy to me.
I totally agree.
It absolutely needs that context.
Because remember, even though Josh didn't play in the regular season finale, aside from the first snap to get his start streak extended, 2 of the 3 final acts. This is what I was trying to get at with him. It was against the Jets and the Patriots, neither of which were postseason teams. So they kind of like limped to the finish line, even though they won 2 of the last 3. Whereas the Ravens had what? It was Houston, it was Pittsburgh, and Cleveland, if I'm remembering correctly. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but clearly the Ravens had a tougher stretch down the home stretch. And that's why I wanted to get that in there. But he may have very well been maxed out there at 30 minutes.
He was. He had his beanie on. He was like, I'm out of here, guys.
Yeah. So. And, 30 minutes with him for free. I mean.
Well, I do kind of want to pose a question to chat, although I don't know if they're going to give the total honest feedback. But you and I talked about this, and I also said something to Acho afterwards. So obviously, this is more on the personal side, but it's talking about Acho. So obviously, I'm a very passionate speaker, right? Very passionate speaker. And sometimes that speaking will spill over into yelling. Bobby and I talked about this. And I DM'd Acho. I was like, sorry if I got a little loud. And remember, he delayed having this conversation because he lost his voice at the Super Bowl. And so when he came on, he was purposely trying to keep it monotone. And he had said to me later in our DMs, he's like, oh, I would have sparred with you more if I wasn't like trying to save my voice or whatever, not try to lose it again. But is it unhelpful? Does it make my points less impactful if I'm yelling rather than just saying it passionately? That's what I want to ask the chat. You know what I mean? Because I think it is. I think that oftentimes when you're yelling it and not saying it passionately, but if you're yelling it, oftentimes that to me means like you really don't have a point and you're losing your emotion. You know, even though I don't think didn't feel in my mind I was losing my emotion. But that's sometimes what people do is they yell if they don't have a good point. And so I don't know if my yelling takes away from my point.
I thought you and I had a good, productive conversation after yesterday's show, and I'm curious to see what the chat has to say, and maybe we can let some of those answers flow in right now and finish up quick hits. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
We'll pull up some on screen if you want, and we can react to them. But I referenced this a little bit earlier on, and it's kind of a nice segue because one of the games that the Ravens have on their schedule next year at home are the New York Jets, and somebody that will not be quarterbacking them next season is Aaron Rodgers, who they announced today officially they are moving on from. And based on reports, this didn't come as a surprise. It's just 2 years, obviously, of disappointment. You had the torn Achilles, obviously, in 2023, a few snaps into his career with the Jets. And then this past season, really, it just was a disaster. And Robert Saleh was fired, and you had injuries, and he wasn't fully healthy. And it was just really a kind of a disastrous 2-year stint with New York. But he has shown no indication of retirement. And so who's it going to be? I've heard some potential rumors swirling about the Las Vegas Raiders. Who's going to take a bridge quarterback? Which team might need a bridge quarterback? So would it be Cleveland? Raiders? Will the Ravens see him in the AFC North? You know? So.
Could you imagine? I don't know, because Deshaun Watson's kind of their guy. I don't think that Aaron wants any sort of question. You know, I'm not here to have to take a back seat if Deshaun Watson's there. I could see the Raiders.
I could see him too, and it's notable.
Devontae back there,
right? Exactly. That would be insane. It's notable too, as far as like who might be under center for the Jets when the Ravens play them next year. They do have the 7th overall pick, so they could go in a couple different directions here. You would think that Cam Ward and Shador are going to be off the board by 7. You would think. Unless, barring something unforeseen happening in those first 5 picks. But the Jets have a decision to make. They could either go the rookie quarterback route or they could chase after a bridge. So that's where things currently stand right now in Jetland. And you had one other quick hit from the Heights, from the Kelce Brothers podcast.
Yeah, I just thought this was interesting. It definitely popped up on my Twitter. Jason Kelce wrote a lengthy tweet. He's like doing a Sarah tweet. My tweets are often long. A lengthy tweet trying to explain himself of like who he was cheering for, this and that. And then he followed up on it, and he kind of was brought to tears because I feel like he felt a lot of pressure of should he be rooting for his former franchise that he played for years and years, or his brother. And obviously he wanted to be supportive of both. And he just felt like there was no way he could win.
What was it like for you watching this one?
Terrible.
Yeah. You tweeted out something.
I didn't even want to tweet it. I think I would rather do it here because you'd be able to talk more.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what happens. Whatever you say is going to get clipped or touched and put out. It sucks. I've always supported you.
Every step of the way.
It was hard to navigate because obviously I'm trying to say that I have people on the Eagles that I love, and I also have you. And I tried to make it known that I was rooting for you, and it felt like I couldn't be right. Felt like no matter what I said, some people are going to skew it and say that I'm rooting for the Eagles, and some people are going to skew it and say that I was rooting for the Chiefs or Travis, and it sucked.
That's the world we live in, man. I know I always had your support, and I joked around saying with your cheering for the Eagles, listen, you and Kylie are there in Philly and have created one of the most beautiful situations that I've ever seen. You guys are loved by the community out there. I know who Jason Kelce is, and I know my brother and what his intentions are, and nobody can ever confuse that. I think the people in the Philadelphia organization understand exactly who you are and what you represent and how you were saying it.
It was very, very hard to watch. Yeah. As much as I love the Eagles, as much as I love the city of Philadelphia, there was not a ounce of me that and I know that, like, I don't know. I tried to correlate that I was rooting for both sides the whole time and that I was going to be happy and sad regardless.
It's a unique situation that nobody can relate to. Nobody can relate to this.
Oof. I've said this before. I hate it when men cry. I don't know why. Like big burly men with his beard, and he's been in the trenches and he can take a hit and this and that. I shouldn't say I hate it. I was
going to say I love it. I absolutely love it.
I guess I should say it hits me hard. I don't want to say I hate it. Like, I'm not saying don't do it. That is not what I meant by that. Yeah, I'm more just saying, like, if men cry, it like hits me hard. It hits me hard. But it's interesting because at the end he's like, nobody can understand it, and I was like, except for the Harbaugh parents.
Yeah. To me, it humanizes these guys. Obviously, Jason is somebody that wears his heart on his sleeve. I know a lot of you probably feel like these brothers have been completely overexposed in recent years, and it's all you ever hear about. It's all you ever see on network television. It's all the Taylor impact is obviously significant as well. And now Jason's wife Kylie has a massively popular podcast that's rising the ranks, and the Kelce family and the extension of the Swift impact is a thing. But man, whenever I see Jason, Sarah, whenever I listen to him, he just comes across as incredibly genuine, and as somebody who really appreciates brotherly love and the relationships that I have with my two younger brothers. We can talk all we want about Travis's antics on the field and how that clearly, between the lines last year, the whole psychological warfare was something that was annoying, I know, for a lot of Ravens fans, and he clearly got under the skin of some and da-da-da-da-da. But man, he's a future Hall of Famer, and it's a unique era that we're living in right now, where you have two brothers that I'm sure Jason, man, you talk about the conflict. He decides to hang it up last year.
Yeah,
right after the Super Bowl run, and then his team goes back the next year and wins it.
Yeah,
against again what would have been another rematch against his brother. So you talk about the whirlwind of emotions and trying to say everything right, as well as trying to keep intact relationships that you've had for years in the organization that you spent your entire career with, and then you got the brotherly impact as well. I mean, talk about. I think it's such a fascinating relationship that these two have kind of like shown the world.
Yeah.
And I'll listen to those episodes every once in a while, because let's be honest, they're two Hall of Famers in their own right, but what they're going to do post career, it might do wonders compared to what they did on a football field, solely based on revenue and impact and whatnot. So good stuff. I know you have a couple comments that you want to pull up from.
Well, here's the last super chat, I think.
We have a couple more actually.
Oh no, let's get to super chats first. Let's get to super chats first. I'll let you drive that, because
we left off with dreams, which means Adam78 says, why not trade Andrews for perhaps a third rounder, and they can replace him with another pass catching tight end in this year's draft and make likely tight end one. It would save $11 million. That's kind of what we were projecting earlier on in our cap segment. Louis.
Just real quick, obviously it's not that easy to just say, replace the franchise touchdown leader. And I know that Adam knows that, but it's the likely thing. It's likely being behind him is what makes this more doable. So, yeah.
Louis,
the Ravens and I are on the same boat. We need money.
Another one from Louis. The last one for today. All hail #the vault. Got to save money. Appreciate you, Louis.
As
and
he gives us money. Thank you.
I know, right?
He said, get Brew on the show. Yeah, we do need to get him on still. That was hilarious. #vault.
Chris Broussard, she's referring to. Asmodeus says, okay, the first piece of feedback here that's come in via Super Chat. We're going to bring up both just because we want to get your thoughts on what Sarah posed a few minutes ago. But Richard says, no, I wished you yelled louder. How about purple and black?
Yeah, so there's a few in here. I'm just giving a variety of what people said to me, but there is one that's my favorite. I'll say this. So purple and black, I don't notice Sarah anymore on my earbuds. I've desensitized you. Mr. Jackson, you were loud at one point, but I took it as passion. Cameron says, be you, though. I hate Simp says, no, Sarah, it doesn't matter how you say something. It's what you say. Shannon Sharp yells 24/7, LOL from Tila. Alan also saying, be yourself. LeVar, Sarah, be you, but this is my favorite, I think. Sarah, be you, but the calmer you can deliver a hard-hitting fact, the deeper it sinks in. And then Charlie says, Sarah, to borrow a movie line, which I have not heard before. So you think it is less impactful if I whisper it? I don't know.
That went over my head too.
Yeah. But so let me just say this. When people say be you, I agree with that. Part of who I am, and I know, Bobby, you're the same way, is always wanting to be better than I was yesterday, right? I want to be a phenomenal podcaster, and I also want to be a phenomenal debater. And so if there's anything about me that's getting in the way of my goal, I want it gone. You know what I mean? So like my goal is to be an excellent mother, right? But everybody has weaknesses. So if there's anything about me that maybe naturally comes, I need to get rid of it as quick as possible because it's who I want to become. Who I want to become is better than who I am now. And so when people say be you, this is me. It's like constantly wanting to tweak and tweak and tweak and tweak until I just continually become a better version. I bet that's almost everybody we're listening to, right? That's what everybody wants. Like that's where I think a lot of happiness comes from, is by growth and moving towards a goal brings a lot of happiness. So, but I do appreciate everybody having my back. And so I'm not going to get rid of the passion. But I do need to get rid of the yelling. So like the way I'm talking, Bobby knows this. Bobby will call me. We'll have our pre-show meeting. He's like, how's your morning? And I'll speak passionately about how my morning was. And it was probably filled with laundry and getting kids off to school and making lunches and a workout and making my bed and all that kind of stuff. But because like I'm excited about getting those things done to set me up for this, and I feel like I've taken care of a home and I feel like I've taken care of kids, somehow I found passion in mundane everyday work, you know? And so my passion has to remain, but especially as a first-time guest, I definitely don't want to yell at them. So, but I know also because people on our audience agreed with me that they like that I give it with passion. So there's got to be a way to fine tune it where I have the passion without yelling at somebody. So that's what I'm thinking.
Phone rings. Hey, good morning, Sarah. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great. How are you?
I just had an incredible workout.
Yeah? For real?
Ready to attack this day.
Which, by the way, can be annoying, right? So like that. And so I need to learn to like, I remember people that weren't morning people, right? And so I can be annoying. And so you got to fine tune yourself. I feel like.
I'll keep our private conversations on feedback to ourselves, but I'll just say, like I said yesterday, I appreciate your self-awareness. And I think it speaks to the growth mindset, which is exactly what you're alluding to right now. And I've tried to have the same type of approach. And I think we all appreciate that about you. And I think yesterday was just a fantastic display of what you do best. You love debate format. You love good spirited debate. You love the Ravens. You've loved being on the front lines of this MVP conversation for the last several months. And ultimately you tailored all that into a fantastic national guest for us that clearly is resonating with our audience based on the way that video is performing. So, yeah, love you for that. Great stuff. Got a couple more super chats too that came in.
Okay.
Or at least one. Asmodeus says, Sarah, please don't tone it down. That's a double standard. So Richard making his opinion clear.
What's a double standard?
Don't know.
Can you clarify that for me, Asmodeus? What's the double
Give you a
standard?
second. Yeah, we'll give you a second to do so, Richard, and get our patrons in. Bill Justice and Toei Faree, thank you both for believing in what we're building. We appreciate you for being integral parts of our Vault Patreon community and all the support that you give us on a monthly basis. If you guys are interested in doing the same and joining that community this offseason, you can do so for as little as $1.99. Just visit patreon.com/RavensVault podcast. You can find that information in the show notes, and we look forward to having you over in that community.
Mm.
He hit you back?
He did. Here, I'll pull it up here. He's saying it's a men versus women thing. Although, don't you feel like so Tila brought up that Shannon Sharp, and we got to go. I know you got to go, and I got to go. Tila brought up that Shannon Sharp yells all the time, right? Which is true. But it can also get annoying. It can hurt your ears. So I've heard people say that. I personally don't feel like I feel like if I leaned into that, Asmodeus, I feel like it would be like, well, if men can do it, I should be able to do it. I don't care what men can get away with personally. I just want to be the best version of me. And I don't know that yelling is it. Although I do hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. But I feel like if I leaned into that, it would be like, oh, well, then I should seek to improve.
Yeah. Good feedback, though, overall from everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
So thanks to Hidden Waters Farm for being this month's small business Patreon title sponsor of the show. Thanks to all of you for dropping by. Over 3,300 concurrents right now across all platforms, Tila. So a great number on this Thursday. We'll be back with you in under 23 hours for a Friday Ravens Lunch Hour live stream. And just because we're a little bit tight on the back end today, I will save, and the timing is fine because it won't have happened until tomorrow night. But I got a Valentine's Day invitation. It's very unorthodox, a little unconventional, and it will be a first for me in terms of what I'm going to be doing, Sarah, on Friday night. I want to share it tomorrow in the quick hits.
Wait. No, I need to know now.
Well, you'll know in a minute, but I want it's going to inspire a conversation because I want to hear people's perspective on it. So we will promise to throw it after quick hits tomorrow, what I'm going to be doing on Valentine's Day night, Friday night.
Okay. I love it.
It's not a date. Okay. It's not a date.
But is it where I'm hoping you're going to be?
That's not till Saturday. I actually owe Richard a DM back to see if we're going to do this on Saturday night in DC.
Yeah.
I got to figure out what my weekend schedule looks like. Richard, I owe you a message back. This is for Friday night, and I think you guys are going to get a kick out of it. And there's probably going to be a lot of jokes at my expense. So I look forward to that.
Okay.
Appreciate you, partner.
I appreciate you.
We'll catch up on Friday. Please like the video on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. Hit that notification bell so you can be notified of when we're dropping our daily year-round content. And go check out that Emmanuel Acho exclusive conversation from yesterday if you haven't already done so. It was great stuff, and Sarah in her best form. So thanks to all of you. We appreciate you. And as always, thanks for joining us here inside the vault. We'll catch up with you on Friday at noon.